Welcome back to my animated stylized text tutorial for Unreal Engine 5. Last time we left off, we got the text to type in these weird letter block looking shapes, which we will explain and dive into today. Make sure you're following from the last video so you don't miss anything. I'm going to add one more thing before we dive into the letter blocks, and that is going to be to make it so if we hold the button, we can speed up the text. This is a small quality of life change that really makes a big impact for the player's convenience. They will love it, so we will make it. And it's also really simple. So when we're actually typing out the text, we're just using this little simple delay here. We'll go ahead and add an if statement before this. And we'll duplicate our delay. And we'll take the same variable that we created last time to detect when the button is being inputted. And we'll simply make it so that when they are holding the input, we'll speed up the delay. Make it much smaller. And we'll just go ahead and plug it in there. I'll go ahead and comment this out. I should have commented better last time, so I'll make up for that today. Let's do speed up dialogue. I actually meant to make this 0.02. So now it should work as planned. Oh yeah. Yep, that does it. Alright, so the letter blocks, what is going on? Well, when using a rich text block, you have to use a text style set to tell the text how you want it to look. This is the rich text block. It's fancy. So you have to tell it exactly how to work. If you open this up, you can see there's nothing there, and that's because we'll need to create it ourselves. So we'll open up our content drawer, and make sure you're putting these in the right folders. I'm just doing it in my content for the sake of the tutorial, but you should know better. In miscellaneous right here, data table. And you have to pick a structure first, and luckily we don't have to make a new one because all we need is what already exists, the rich text style row. So we'll go ahead and click that. Now, ordinarily you would do DT for data table, but because this is going to be specifically a style table meant just for styling your text, I like to use STYL. Use whatever you want. Style dialog. And we'll open that up, and we'll go ahead and save that. So this add button will allow us to add new rows, which will be full with the default rich text style rows. Let's go ahead and rename this one. I'm just going to name it basic. This will be our basic text. Here we can go ahead and choose our font, our font size, letter spacing, skew, font material, if you want to use a font material, color, all that. I don't want purple. Let's make it white. That's so strange. I'm going to add an outline as well. Okay. So for now, it'll fit our needs just to leave this as default here. We'll leave this as basic, and then let's go ahead and add a new row, which we'll name this one font. And this one, we'll add our own custom font. So you can just find one online. Once you've located your font and imported it, you'll get prompted, would you like to create a new font asset using the imported font face as default font? I'm just going to click yes. And then now we have the font here. Mine was called Swing King. Now that we have that in here, you can just choose your font. And I should have duplicated the other one to keep the outline in color, but I didn't, so I'm going to quickly change those and save. Great. So now we'll go back into letter character, and we'll set our style dialog to be our text style set. Just like this. Now, let's see how this looks. It's still in letter blocks. Okay, I had a slight mishap. There has to be a default row in here as well. So go ahead and add a default row, and we can just set that to be Roboto. Just all the defaults. I will go. I'll just make this white because it looks good. Okay, so if we were to hit play now, we can start to see our text, and you can see the characters are spaced out quite a bit. So you could do negative letter spacing here, but what I would do instead is go back into our dialog, and on the slot padding for the X, just put a negative amount, because that's just the wrap box doing its thing. It's not the font's fault. So we'll fix it where it lies, and now our text looks a lot better. If you wanted to use your new font, you could just click it there. Now the font is changed. Now we're going to be figuring out how to choose which style inside the texts so that we can have different styles for different characters in the same string. And the way we would do that is using what I would call style tags. And it's going to require quite a lot more work, but that is simply what we need to do for something this complex to be possible. So what our goal will be is to be able to use caret keys inside of our texts, and we'll put spaces, and to be able to use them like this, whereas this font here is derived from what we named this row, which is font. And that would apply this style to just the text that is in between here and where we close it off with a forward key. Now these would not be able to be overlapped, so I could not do font and then have basic right there. I could not do that before I close out the current tag first. I'm sure you could program your own way to do that, but that seems a lot more complicated than just making a new style. I'm going to leave this text with that in there for now. If you hit play, it will not work quite yet because we have not built a system to figure out the tags. Now, these caret keys work on their own. If we were to go into common here and add our own rich text block here. Now if we were to type basic and then font, just like that, you can see the caret keys do apply the styles in the rich text block. Like that. Now if we let that type out, it does not work. And the reason for this is because it types out one character at a time. And not only that, every single character is one character. So what we're going to be building is a system that will, as it types through the text, it will detect these tags and apply that style to any character in between the two tags until it is closed off. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but we can get her done. These things take work. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and comment some of this code so we don't get in over our heads and lost trying to read where everything is at. Going to name this one initialize new dialog. If I can spell it correctly. I'm going to separate that up a little bit. Let's go ahead and name this one type out characters. And this here, I will comment this out too. This will be create letter. Okay, that'll do it for that. So what we're going to be needing to do is create a lot of space right here. So we'll go ahead and grab all of this. Oops. And we'll slide it over. Okay. And what we'll be adding in between here is an if branch. And what we want to do is figure out if the character that we're observing is equal to a opening tag caret key, so a left caret key. And we'll use this one here. If it's equal exactly to left caret key, we'll plug that in. I'm going to go ahead and reroute that. It's in the way. And if it's true, then we'll have our own event up here. And if it's false, we'll just continue on. We're going to be creating a lot of new little variables here soon. The first one will be a string variable, which will be called current style tag. And we'll go ahead and set this to null. And off of this node, we'll right click and collapse the nodes We will want to make sure it's a collapsed graph and not a function or a macro. We'll go ahead and name this style tag graph. And this is what we will use to do all the style tag stuff. It'll be self-contained in this graph. We will go ahead and add an output for exec here. And we'll go ahead and plug this in here. Okay, so let's enter in. Here's the node that we just had. So what we're going to be needing more variables for is more indexes when we're searching through. Because once we have this left caret key detected, we will want to keep detecting, we want to keep stepping through the string until we get the closing one, and then only take note of what was in between the caret keys. And then we can do an action based on that. So I'm going to create another variable. I'll call this one style tag end search index. And this will be an integer. Now following this, we'll need to get our input text, and we'll need to get our character arrays as from the string, just like we did before. And then we want to get a copy. And what we want to get is our current letter index that we're at in the current step that we're stepping through. And we'll also want to get our style tag in search index and add these together. Okay, so since this is 0, what we'll be doing basically is this will just be returning the caret key. That's where we're at right now. And we want to create an if branch. And we want to see if what we're currently stepping at is equal to the closed caret key, which it will not be yet because we just started. Let's go ahead and move that this away. So we're going to be operating out of this false branch for now. So our current style tag, we'll go ahead and grab a set here. And out of the false, we will be setting an append string. This append will pop up. So we want to get our current style tag, and we want to append what we just got into it. Afterwards, we want to increment on our index. And then add a delay until next tick. This will prevent an infinite loop. And this is also why it had to be in a graph and not a function. What you could do is create a macro and use local variables for all of this and have the macro take care of this so it's not an infinite loop. But that's a lot of work for what will not really increase performance much at all, I don't think. And this is performing just fine, so there's no worries there. Go ahead and loop this right back to the start here. So what this will do is it will keep stepping through until we have the closed caret. In which case, oops, not comment. Earlier I mentioned that we were just getting the string in between the caret, but we're also including the caret keys themselves. So we'll just go ahead and append the closed one here. Could also just drag from here, but we know for certain that it is this already, so that's fine. I like having these line up. It looks real good to me. And before we can move on, there is something else that we need to do. We do need to do this once more. And we will also need to set the letter index now, because we're about to return back to our current stepping in our event graph, but we want to step after the caret key, not from the beginning, which is what made us enter here. So we need to update our letter index to accommodate that. So what we'll do is the same as we did in the beginning of this. And we'll just set the letter index to be the search index plus the letter index. Simple enough. And I'm going to add one more variable here, which we are about to use, and I will call this isInStyle. And essentially what's going to happen here is this boolean will determine whether or not we're closing out a style or opening up a new one. So this current style tag, which we have been recording through this step, we want to make sure that this is equal to our closing tag. And if it's equal to the closing tag, we actually want to get the opposite of this. So type not bool to get the opposite. That way it will not be in style if our tag is equal to this. And we'll go ahead and add a branch here with the isInStyle connected. We will set our current style tag to be null if this is false, and if it's true, we will continue. The reason this is a variable is because we're using it out here as well. Otherwise, you could just hook this up, but we need this variable. Let's go ahead and leave to our event graph where we left. And before we can set this next letter, we will have to do another thing, so I'm going to drag this out more. So what would happen logically here is, assuming that this closing one was the very last thing in a string, if we set the index past that, it's no longer valid, so we need to have a check for that before we continue further. So once again, input text, get character array from string, get letter index. I'm just going to drag from the same one. But what we need to do is get an dragging from the get character array from string. We need to look for isValidIndex, and we need to search for our current index. Okay, we'll go ahead and plug that into a branch. We'll just plug it into both of these here. So if it is valid, continue onward. But if this isn't valid, we want this to hook down here into the finished typing. Now we're going to be adding some things to our create letter. So we'll go ahead and expand this a little bit. And we're going to want to create an append string node. And this is where our current style tag comes into play. We'll want to put this at the start of what we're plugging in, followed by our next letter. And then we want a third pin here, and I'm running out of room again, so I must drag this down. In this third pin, we want to have a select string, which we'll plug into here. And this is where our isInStyle comes into play, because if it is not in style, if this is false, we want to also just go ahead and append a close to it. If it is, leave it null. And so what this current setup ultimately is doing is, as it steps through this, it will detect the caret, and it will step through and get this tag, and it will resume right after. And for all of the characters here, it will add the tag in front of it, inside of the letter character, which is what we want, because we want every single character that we create in this widget to have that style. And I actually, when I mentioned this earlier, I reversed it. And if it is in style, we want to add the closing tag at the end of it, because if there's no closing tag, it will not apply the style. So we have to put that on there. Now let's go ahead and test this out. We have our font there. Let's just make sure that it does our font. Oh yeah. Now let's increase this test. So for the text here, we will do font text. Then we will copy and paste this. And we'll go back to basic afterwards. And I'll name this basic text. Now let's go ahead and give that a test. You can see they have two different fonts. You can also see all those spaces are accumulating, so should probably be removing those. Okay, so I did not need the spaces on the insides here. Only on the outsides. You want a space in between your tags. I think that was my error there. Yep, that was it. And so now, instead of purple boxes, we have text, and we can change the texts with the default Unreal settings for the fonts. I think I'll end this video here, but next video is where we will finally create some animations to stylize this text, because right now it's quite literally just text. There's nothing stylized about it yet. It's just a font, but we'll get to that in the next one, which I will put up immediately, so get ready for that. But yeah, till then.